You know that feeling, right? You're stuck in traffic or maybe just watching the microwave countdown, and you suddenly realize you're not really there. You're somewhere else. You're mentally in next week, having that conversation you've been dreading. Or maybe you're in next year, living as this kind of idealized version of yourself. It really does feel like your actual life is just some temporary hallway you have to walk through to get to the good part. And look, this feeling is so common. We tell ourselves things like, okay, I'll finally start living, I'll finally be happy once I get that promotion, or once I move to that new city. But in the meantime, the person we are right now is just stuck in this permanent state of waiting. It's almost like we're just holding our breath, simulating our existence instead of actually living it. That's really what it feels like, isn't it? You're physically here, but your mind is just constantly running these simulations, replaying past events, crafting the perfect comeback for a conversation that's probably never going to happen. Now, if this sounds at all familiar, you're not just distracted. There's a whole psychological architecture behind this, one that was most likely built to protect you a long, long time ago. So, okay, let's give this whole experience a name. We're going to call it life in the waiting room. It's that feeling of being an actor just playing a part, waiting for the real show to finally begin. But why? Why does our brain even do this? Well, here's the thing. It turns out this isn't just some personality quirk. Nope, there is a really powerful neurological system behind it. So let's dive into the science and explore the brain's very own built-in simulation engine. It's called the default mode network, or DMN for short, and it's basically what your brain defaults to the second you stop focusing on a task. It's where your daydreams live, it's where your worries fester, it's where your memories play out. For a lot of people, this is just kind of background noise. But for some of us, it becomes the preferred place to be. And this is where things get really interesting, because it sets up this huge contrast. On one side, you've got the friction of real life. It's messy, it's unpredictable, and sometimes it just feels kind of flat compared to our rich inner worlds. But on the other side, you have the inner simulation. And in your head, you have total control. You can rewind that fake conversation over and over until you get the perfect emotional resolution you're craving. So it's really no wonder the brain can start to find this curated world way more rewarding than reality itself. Okay, so that raises a huge question, right? Why? Why do some brains prefer this simulation so much? Well, it's not random. This preference is often a learned behavior with really deep roots, which brings us to the history of your overthinking. For a lot of us, the roots of this go way, way back, often to a childhood where the world just felt unpredictable. Maybe stability always felt temporary, or the adults in your life were just spread too thin to give you a real sense of safety or resolution. So what did you do? You became an expert at managing ambiguity. You learned to just wait for a future that felt safer than the present moment. You can almost see the logic, right? It's like a step-by-step process. First, you experience an unpredictable world. Then you learn that thinking ahead, running all these scenarios in your head, is how you stay safe. And before you know it, your brain has basically become a threat detection machine, constantly simulating social situations to make sure you're reading the room perfectly. Overthinking, it literally becomes a survival skill. Okay, so after hearing all of that, it's so easy to think, oh great, there's something wrong with me that I need to fix. But what if we didn't? What if we tried a radical shift in perspective? Let's try to reframe this entire experience and move it from something that feels like a flaw to something that's actually a superpower. So let me just ask you the question, the one you've probably asked yourself a million times already. Is this a flaw in your personality? The answer is no. A hard no. Absolutely not. Think about it. The ability to build entire worlds inside your own mind, filled with all this emotional depth and nuance, that's not a flaw. That is a genuinely remarkable capability. Look, you didn't develop this incredibly complex inner world because you're flawed. You developed it because you're resilient. You built an exit door for yourself when the real world wasn't giving you one. It's a testament to your strength, not a sign of weakness. All right, so if it's not a flaw we need to get rid of, then what do we do with it? How do we take this superpower and actually use it to step out of the waiting room and into our lives for real? That brings us right to our final section, building your life now. And listen, this is probably the most important thing I'm going to say. The goal is not to declare war on yourself. It's not to try and force yourself to stop disappearing into your head. That's an exhausting, impossible fight to win. Instead, the goal is to get curious about what that disappearing act is actually doing for you. So instead, here's the key question to start asking yourself. What emotional need is being met in that fantasy world? Is it a feeling of control, of being truly seen and understood by someone? Maybe a sense of connection. Whatever it is, that fantasy is pointing you directly to an unmet need in your real life. So the real work then is about bridging that gap. It's this slow and, yeah, sometimes awkward process of building that same richness, but in the real world. It all starts with truly believing that your needs are not a burden, and understanding that your capacity to receive from other people is just as mature and important as your capacity to give. You were never built to carry all of this beautiful, complex depth in silence. And that brings us to one last thought. After all this time you've spent waiting to become this more perfect version of yourself, what if the person with all that depth, all that resilience, that remarkable capacity to build entire worlds, what if that person has been here the entire time? What if the person you're waiting to become is already here, just waiting for you to finally stop holding your breath?